The first seat you'll come to when you come in the loader's hatch is, of course, the loader's seat. He's got a small little circular seat which folds up. Other features other than the ammunition which he loads, he's going to have a little light of his own. This here is for the armoured housings on top of the transmission compartment. Now, a neat feature about the SU-100 from a technical aspect is you can see very clearly the large housings for the springs for the Christie suspension. In addition to the springs, you also have directly underneath me the axle that the road wheel arm will rotate around. On the left-hand side, again, you have another spring which is angled slightly forward. And you can also see where most of the 33 rounds of 100mm ammunition will go. The gunner is located forward of the loader. He has his own folding seat which folds up against the gun. To his direct front are his main controls. He only has manual, no power on this vehicle. To traverse, he has a screw system, and for elevation it is a toothed arc. The gun is the D10S 100mm. Excellent weapon. It's all serviced through on the T-54, T-55 series as well, and could also be found as a towed anti-tank gun, the Rapira. Semi-automatic type, so to get going you simply open up the breech block, and every time you insert a round, the breech block will automatically close. At this point in the war, such systems are pretty much standard. The weapon had a max elevation at 20 degrees, depression of 3, and would do 16 degrees of traverse to either side. The one downside of it was that the overhang over 3.5 meters was very long, and you had to be very careful when you were driving this thing not to accidentally hit something. The weapon was sighted with a TSH-19. This was a vision sight which is located alongside the gun tube. This was graduated out with an effective range of 4,600 meters. Of course, you weren't going to hit tanks at that range, but you could shoot HE without any great difficulty. The only other things that you find for the gunner, directly above him is going to be the large two-piece side opening hatch, in which is the pretty much ubiquitous MK4 sight at this point, which is traversable or adjustable in elevation. And also to the right, you're going to see the internal travel lock. This, you pull out the pin, it'll allow the travel lock to swing down, and then it'll connect to the eyelets on the back here. And this just reduces the stress which is going onto the elevation gear. The gun is mounted in a frame. The elevation trunnions are on vertical side pieces that meet at the bottom for the traverse. That itself slots into the mantlet housing, which is bolted to the front of the plate. Should the electric firing trigger, which is on the elevation handle, fail to work, there is a manual backup. You'll find that a little bit lower on the right. All you do is just simply push down. The easiest way to get into the driver's seat from the gunner's seat is to fold down the backrest, and that's done simply enough. The armrests form a U-shaped piece, the bar or the base of which is actually in notches on the back. You lift up the armrest, you can then lower down the seat back and just slide forward. Now the driver's position is a little bit different from that of the T-34. It's been moved a little bit forward, and also of course you have the large gun on the right hand side which gets in the way. As a result, the first difference is that the left steering tiller has been bent inwards a bit and kind of interferes with you. The second one is that the gear shift is now between your legs instead of off to the right. To save a little bit of room on the hatch opening system, you will recall the T-34 had a long piston here. Well, no, this is now a double torsion bar system. Pull it out, and you will seal your driver's hatch. The two periscopes with the two protective housings remain the same. Just open her up. Oops. There we go. The leg is much easier. Controls otherwise are pretty much similar. You have the same gear pattern. The switches for the starter and so on are in slightly different places. The master power is now forward and right. The front wheel suspension has been moved. This is now a vertical spring which is in your way. On the left side are where the starters are. We'll see them a little bit later for the oil and the one in the starter motor. To his right is storage for another 8 rounds of 100mm ammunition. To his very close right is the traverse mechanism. And you can see there's actually a lot of wasted space at the very bottom to the right where there is absolutely nothing in there. I guess you could leave some toolkits or some sort. You can, of course, you have to lean on your front to go and reach that release clip for the track tension system. And you can also see an exposed coil spring for the right #1 road wheel suspension unit. Other than that, the controls are pretty similar to figure out. Clutch, brake, accelerator, a hand throttle. The engine cuts off the same way as on the T-34. You simply put the throttle to idle and that'll completely kill your fuel flow. Handbrake, again, the same way. It is a simple drop lever. Another small quirk with steering is because the gun is mounted to the right, the vehicle's a little bit right heavy. This resulted in a tendency of the vehicle to drift right if not otherwise compensated. The steering itself is, again, same as the T-34, very simple clutch brake. Directly above him, this is the internal of the firing port. Very simply, you simply unscrew this, just like all the other ones. Down it comes, you push forward the armored plug, and this is really more for the gunner to shoot out of than the driver. Starting the SU-100, as you can imagine, very similar to the T-34-85. So, of course, first thing, gear shift must be in neutral. Set your hand throttle about halfway forward, press down on the clutch. Next you want to do, of course, is pump. The horn doesn't work in this one, and then a starter motor. So it's been a little bit finicky today, so this might take a couple of goes. Or maybe it won't. Okay, the gear shift pattern is exactly the same, forwards or backwards. So go slightly forwards. Okay, let's see what happens. Brake off. Okay, take the plug off the clutch, and I'm looking at how the steering handles will hit me, and it's not going to be pleasant. Give me an eye on the mechanic there. Okay, back into neutral. And then forward into reverse. Foot off the brake, let go of the clutch. And backwards we go. That was simple enough. Put it back into neutral, just a little further into first. Back into neutral again. Let go of the clutch. I actually am in neutral. Reapply the handbrake. Kill the engine. And that was simple. It actually took me a while. The gear pattern isn't absolutely central. Took me a couple of seconds to figure out where the actual notch was. So compared to the earlier T-34 I drove, actually changing gear was actually a lot easier once I figured out where the pattern was. Didn't have to use quite as much force, it was a lot smoother. The last and definitely most cramped position is that of the commander. Now there has been a concession to his physical body in that they've made this little bulge for his shoulder to go. However, he has no room for his legs. And now this isn't me, this 2-meter tall guy saying, I have no room for my legs. This vehicle has no room for the commander's legs. My left foot is resting on one of the internal fuel tanks, but my right leg is bent inwards because of the housing for the coil spring for the suspension. And there really is nowhere for the guy's right foot to go. To the right are electronics, upwards would be the radio. By the way, if you go too far left, you're going to hit the gun, especially if it's traversed to the left. And he wants to be very careful because there's no recoil guard here. The breech is going to come sliding back. If his arms aren't up out of the way, he very well could lose an arm. This is not the most comfortable position. To have a look around, he does have 6 direct vision slits in the non-rotating cupola. The cupola hatch does rotate. It's a 2-piece split hatch. And in the roof of it is yet another Mk4 Unity sight, which can be adjusted in elevation and, in theory, in traverse. These old museum pieces, they're often a little bit stiff. Last point to note is directly beneath him is the escape hatch, which it looks like can only be used if the gun is traversed to the right, the breech to the left. Behind him, I'm not entirely sure how we're supposed to get to it. I presume the loader really is another firing port with a direct vision slit. Directly against the wall are the ammunition storage racks for the submachine gun ammo, and of course the 2 ventilator housings. As far as tank destroyers go, the SU-100 was about as good as you're going to get. It was low, mobile, and you can't really argue with the 100mm. In fact, the worst you could say about the vehicle was it was a little bit nose heavy and it tended to wear out the running gear a little bit quickly. Under the project code of Object 138, just shy of 1,600 were built by June of '45, and production ceased with 2,495 of them having been built. Outside of that, there's not really much else to say. It was a vehicle that did its job well. Hope you found the tour somewhat informative, and we'll see you, as ever, on the next one.